It was the only reason I wanted to do it last season. They called it a comedy, but MASH was never just a comedy with its mix of funny jokes and drama. It brought millions of watchers into a Korean War hospital that felt very real when it first came on TV in 1972. No one could have guessed that a half-hour funny side show would change TVOR, that its last episode would get more than 100 million watchers, becoming the most watched scripted show in American history. But behind laughs and clapping were stories few ever heard: fights on set, creative epirables, and personal fights burned under the surface. And now, after many years of staying quiet, Alan Alda is talking about it. In a recent interview, Alda opened up about the off-camera stuff, including one cast member he says simply couldn't get along with its orari look behind the operating room curtain, and it shows that even in ONF-TV's most loved groups, not everyone got along. What went on behind the scenes of MASH is just as interesting as what played out on screen, and, for the first time, much of it is finally coming to light behind Theckertain, the real-life drama off-screen. Fights could be just as real, sometimes more so, while MASH grabbed millions with its mix of jokes, and not everything behind the scenes was as smooth as it looked. McLean Stevenson, the actor who brought Thefrenly, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blick life, left the show hoping to break out as a main actor somewhere else, but after leaving in season 3, he re-listened something he hadn't expected watchers didn't love. McLean, they loved Henry Heights. After MASH, projects never reached the same heights, and he would later admit that leaving was one of his biggest work regrets. Loretta Switwa played the very able and often overlooked Major Hot Lips Hala Hankum close to leaving as well in the early 80s. She was offered the starring role of Christine Cagney in Cagney Endlessly. The part was hers, but MASH producers refused to let her go from her contract. Swit, ever professional, stayed and continued to bring depth and respect to a role that had grown far beyond its original one note. Even Wayne Rogers, the charming and quick-thinking trapper, John, made an early exit. Unlike his co-stars, Rogers never actually signed a binding contract giving him the freedom to walk away. For just 3 seasons, he reportedly got frustrated with the creative direction of the show and the imbalancing screen time, particularly as Alan Alda's Hawkeye began to take over. His leaving wasn't total expected, but it was final. Then there was Jamie Farr, who played Corporal Max Klinger, a character originally meant to appear in only a single episode. Klinger's early storyline, which had him wearing women's clothes in hopes of getting a Section 8 discharge, was at first seen as a one-time gag, but Farr's natural charm and perfecting turned Klinger into a breakthrough actor. What could have been a passing joke became a fan favorite and over time grew into one of the show's most down-to-earth, loyal, and complex characters. Has stayed with the show for the entire 11-season run, proving that sometimes the best parts of a series happened by accident. While the cast brought laughter and warmth to millions, their off-camera experience were shaped by career decisions, contract fights, and studio politics, the same kinds of pressures that exist in any high-stakes workplace. In the case of MASH, those fights sometimes boiled over, but they also helped create a show that remains truth in the fiction. MASH was never afraid of truth on screen or off. While it was technically a sitcom, the show constantly pushed the boundaries of hot TV comedy could be at its chart. It was a commentary on the silliness of war, delivered with sharp, layered performances and a sense of emotional honesty that was rare for its time. That honesty came in part from the cast themselves. Several of the show's stars were real military veterans. Alda served in the Army Reserve, graduating from Fordham University. Jamie Farr, who played Klinger, served actively in the U.S. Army stationed in Japan, and later in Korea. Shortly after the conflict ended, their time in uniform added a level of realness to their performances that couldn't be faked. This weren't just roles. They were reflections of personal experience. Their realism extended to the creative choice behind the camera. Hawkeye Pierce, the series' main character, was never shown carrying a gun. A deliberate decision that underlined his commitment to not hurting it was a subtle but powerful statement, particularly in a time when violence was often glamorized in TV. Another bold choice, Thello track, in an era when sitcoms relied heavily on canned laughter. MASH assisted the producers, fought CBS to limit it entirely. While the network refused, they did agree to leave the surgical scenes free of forced laughter. Quiet acknowledgement that some moments deserved space, not punchlinesses. The seasons went on, and the show made sure even the required laugh track toned down the laughter, softened then faded, letting the storyline's breath and the emotion land without fake cues. This sensitivity to tone and reality set MASH apart. It wasn't just a war comedy, it was a study of humanity under pressure. Funny, yes, but I'll say brutally honest. It acknowledged pain, death, silliness, and survival, often with them. The same scene for many watchers, especially those who had lived through war themselves. That honesty struck a chord, and for the actors who had seen it up close, it wasn't just a performance, it was personal rivalries, friendships, and fun. The cast of MASH became a family, but like any family, there were rivalries, fights, and spirited clashes. Working side by side for over a decade, the bonds ran deep, but so did the criticism that sometimes brought cast members into conflict. Alan Alda and Mike Farrell, who played the beloved duo Hawkeye and BJ, shared a particular committee of friendship off camera. The two constantly challenged each other not just in performance, but in and lighthearted dares one off their ongoing contests was to see Hakud master standing on their hands first. It started as fun, but underneath, playfulness was a shared drive to push boundaries, both their own and Thisho's. That same energy fueled real creative disagreements. Farrell has spoken about moments when he clashed with writers and even Alda over how his character was portrayed, especially in scenes where BJ seemed to act out after one such disagreement became particularly heated, showing just how invested he was in maintaining the integrity of the role. Despite the friction, there was an unshakable respect, especially for Alda. Over time, he became more than just the show's lead actor. He evolved into its creative center. 31 episodes creating, 13 and working closely with producers to shape a tone, message, and direction of the series. He wasn't just playing Hawkeye, who was helping guide the soul of MASH. Alda's influence extended to the final chapter of the show. As the cast and crew debate whether to keep going or wrap things up, Alda played a key role in steering the decision. The result, the epic series finale, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, was deeply personal, emotionally layered, and unlike anything TV had seen. Through all the rivalries, long shoots, and creative battles, the cast stayed connected. The disagreements never overshadowed the mission. They all believed in telling meaningful stories, making people think, and honoring the realities of those holy and served through War Secrets, Legends, and One Missing Teddy Bear. Some stories from MASH are so perfect, they sound made up, but they're entirely true over the years. The line between the fictional world of the 4077 and the real lives of the cast blurred in unforgettable ways, giving the show a kind of magic that no script could create. Take Radar's teddy bear, that scruffy little stuffed toy that became Aquiot's symbol of innocence. Amid the chaos of war after the series ended, the vanished for decades, its whereabouts remained a mystery until it resurfaced at an auction. Nearly 30 years later, through an embidder none other than Gary Berghoff, the actor who played Radaroli himself, it was a full circlement that felt like it had been scripted, but it wasn't. Then there's Skip and Tuttle, the completely invented by Hawkeye as part of fun elaborate prank. So convincing was the episode that Tuttle was even credited at the end as being played by himself. Fiki nod to the audience that remains into the show's most clever inside jokes in the final season. The characters buried a time capsule as a gesture to the future, a small piece of their story left behind for someone else to discover. That wasn't just TV fantasy mints. After filming, construction worker stumbled upon the actual capsule buried exactly where the set once stood. What began as a symbolic farewell became a real-world treasure hunt with a surprise ending. Even in this list details, real life seeped into show. The framed photo of Colonel Potter's wife visible on his desk in of episodes wasn't a prop, it was a photo of actor Harry Morgan's actual wife. And when B. J. Hunnicutt spoke lovingly about his daughter Erin, he wasn't just reading lines. That name came straight from Mike Farrell's real life. It belonged Beto, his own daughter. A quiet tribute tucked inside the character's story. These little moments, heartfelt, fun, often accidental, helped ground MASH in something more real than even the best writing could offer. They remind watchers that behind every joke, every speech, every tear were real people, powering real pieces of themselves into a show that would go on to mean everything. Tomil saw a show that outlived its war. The Korean War lasted just over 3 years, but MASH ran for 11, from 1972 to 1983. The series delivered 256 episodes that redefined what a TV show could be: witty and unflinching. It remained sharply written, emotionally raw, and politically bold throughout its run. At a time when most sitcoms played it safe, MASH confronted war, loss, love, and morality with a rare kind of honesty, and still managed to find humor in the dark corners of the human experience. The show also became a launchpad for future stars. Ron Howard, Leslie Nielsen, and a young Patrick Swayze all made guest appearances before their big breaks, giving audiences an early glimpse at talents who would soon become household names. Even in episodes with only a few scenes, MASH had a way of giving moments weight and giving Jeppel their start, but behind the scenes, pace was wearing everyone down. By season 9, the cast and writers were feeling the strain. Alan Alda, the show's creative anchor and emotional core, had planned to step away after the 10th season, and CBS, desperate to keep the series alive, convinced him to stay just one more year. It was a turning point. A season 11 approached. The question became unavoidable: should MASH continue? The cast took it to a vote, a rare move in TV history. After more than a decade of service, the majority decided it was time to bring the series to a close. There were still stories left to tell, but they wanted to end the show with dignity on their own terms. That decision led to one of the most iconic farewells in entertainment history. Unlike so many long-running series that fade away or overstay their welcome, MASH bowed out with intention and grace, leaving behind a legacy that will resonate long after the last chopper lifted off. Farewell, but never goodbye. The final episode of MASH was a TV milestone, deeply emotionally human, and watched by over 100 million people. But despite what audiences saw on air, it wasn't the last episode the cast filmed. That distinction belongs to, as time goes by, a quieter, more thoughtful installment, where the characters gather to bury a time capsule beneath the camp, a symbolic farewell not to their fictional lives but to their all-shared experience of making TV history. In that moment they weren't just saying goodbye to Dorothy, were sealing a piece of them so Vicinto, the ground, knowing it had all means something off-screen. Many of the bonds forged during those 11 years never faded. Loretta Swit, who gave strength and depth to Major Margaret Hallahan, remained especially close to Harry Morgan, the actor behind Colonel Sherman Potter. Long after the show ended, they stayed neighbors and friends until Morgan's passing in 2011. Swit also maintained a deep connection with Alan Alda, and his family relationships, built not just on work, but on years of shared growth, laughs and losses. And through I tell one image from the series still lingers. The heart of MASH distilled into a single moment: Hawkeye standing in the middle of war, wearing a tired smile, carrying no weapon. Just his wit, his sweariness, and his conviction to heal no therm. That choice to make kindness his only armor said everything about the Man-Thee show, and the message that still resonates today.